Hello, my name is Richard Gray, and in this short presentation, I'm going to tell you the strange but true story of how one of the world's foremost experts in third world poverty accidentally stumbled into a microfarming method so ingenious it has the power to permanently provide every family in America with a self-replenishing supply of fresh meat, nutritious vegetables, and pure clean drinking water. Developed for some of the world's most dangerous war zones and crisis hotspots, places where innocent families are tragically murdered just for hiding food from the army and even their hungry neighbors. This secret farm has been specifically designed to be set up and operational in under 3 hours, takes up only a few square feet of space, and is completely undetectable to those who don't know it exists. Your neighbor could be standing right in your backyard and they'd never realize that they're just a few steps away from a hidden Noah's Ark, something that can keep your family well fed, fully nourished, and filled with healthy energy both during the crucial first days following a natural disaster and for the decades that could follow a total collapse. Sound impossible? I thought so too until the first time I saw it in action with my own 2 eyes. And inside this short video, I will not only show you the proof that this automated microfarm works flawlessly, I'll even give you the instructions you need to build it for yourself today so that it's fully operational within the next 24 hours. In fact, I'm willing to guarantee that if you stick with me for the next 5 minutes, you will go to sleep tonight filled with an overwhelming feeling of confidence, because you'll know that even in the most terrifying collapse or disaster, everything you need to protect your loved ones from thirst, starvation, and the violent individuals and organizations that will target any family they suspect of having precious food is discreetly hidden in your own backyard or your apartment closet, right in arm's reach. Even if you only have a few square feet of backyard space to work with, or live in an apartment, or don't think you could take care of a houseplant, or have never built anything before with your own 2 hands. And if it all sounds too good to be true, don't worry. So did 24,615 other American patriots just like you, until they tried it for themselves. People like Kevin Crouch of Salem, Oregon, who writes, "When I first stumbled onto your website and watched your video presentation, I was extremely skeptical. There are just so many people on the web making all kinds of promises, and it seems like most of them are more concerned with the health of their wallet than with the true safety of American families. But after following the instructions you provided in your video and setting up this system in my small backyard, I've become a total convert. I can't tell you how incredible it feels to know that I have a discreet supply of fresh meat and clean water hidden 5 steps from my patio, or that my family now has the essential resources needed to survive any disaster situation. Thank you." And Tommy Sala of Winter Haven, Arizona, who says, "Living in the desert, I've always been afraid that if our drinking water was contaminated or the grid crashed, my wife and I would be in serious trouble. Fresh water is not exactly bountiful out here, and it's not easy storing a supply of food and water in 110-degree summers. That's why the video on your website has been a life changer. Let me know how I can help you get this out there to as many people as possible." Now, I'm going to give you all of the details about how this microfarm works and tell you everything you need to know to set it up for yourself in just a few seconds. But first, let me quickly share with you who I am and how I came to discover the secret system that can keep your family 100% self-sufficient in times of crisis, even as those around you succumb to gnawing hunger and thirst. So like I said, my name is Richard Gray, and I'm a third-generation farmer living in California's Imperial Valley. Specifically, our farm is located next to the Salton Sea on the outskirts of a town called Salton City. I'm not going to beat around the bush on this one. Salton City is one of the most depressing, difficult places to live in the entire country. Temperatures in the valley frequently rise to over 100 degrees. The rate of unemployment is around 27%. We're often called the meth production capital of the Southwest. And the average income is $16,000, which makes us one of the poorest towns in the entire state of California. Plus, we've also been in one of the worst droughts in the history of the southwestern United States. So bad, in fact, that a few years ago the bureaucrats in the state capitol signed a piece of legislation that diverts all of the water from the Colorado River away from the Salton Sea and directly to the mega metropolises of San Diego and Los Angeles. With a swipe of a pen, a government that cares only about 10% of the population that lives in the big cities cut our town off from any fresh water and placed an airtight chokehold around our throats and our futures. Now, given how desperate this situation is, you may be wondering why I'd ever raise a family in a place like this. But the truth is, things weren't always so terrible. In the 1950s, the Salton Sea was supposed to be the California Riviera. It was an oasis in the harsh desert landscape, and families flocked from across the country to its quaint sandy shores. Here's a postcard from the 50s I recently found at the Salton Sea History Museum. And check this picture out. That's Guy Lombardo, Jerry Lewis, and Frank Sinatra all posing for a picture after a day of yachting out on the water. But those were better times. Today, the drought has desolated our once beautiful community so badly that we farmers simply can't grow our crops. And the pollution runoffs from farms further north, ones that stretch thousands of acres and that are owned by companies like Monsanto, they've poisoned our once bountiful sea so badly that only one single species of fish remains in the entire body of water, and they're dying off at a record rate too. Here's what our sea looks like today. Here's what our fish population looks like, and here's a view of the middle of the town. In a lot of ways, the Salton Sea is a microcosm of what happens when the government breaks down, rule of law disappears, and chaos takes over. So it should be easy to see why 3 years ago I made the difficult decision to let my farm die, and to use what precious water there was left to create a small garden right outside our house, something that would produce just enough food for my family to survive. My wife Susan and daughter Sarah quickly grew tired of eating nothing but a handful of vegetables 3 times a day, but at least they had food in their stomachs. Until, that is, the fateful night when we suddenly had our last chance at independence snatched right out from under us. It happened so fast. I was asleep in bed next to Susan when I heard a loud crash outside the window. Not knowing what was happening, I grabbed my rifle from the closet and charged right into the black night. But it was too late. Shining my flashlight around the yard, I saw that my worst nightmare had come true. The small but thriving garden I'd planted lay completely bare. All of my fresh fruits and vegetables had been picked clean, and almost every plant had been trampled over in the intruder's hasty escape. All it took was 10 minutes for the only food source that my family had left to be completely demolished, leaving me completely helpless to provide for my wife and daughter. Now, I don't know if it was another starving farmer who committed the theft or some meth head who thought he could sell the vegetables for money or what, but I do know that I hope you never have to experience the way it feels to know that you failed the ones you love the most and who most depend on you to keep them safe. It's like being punched directly in the solar plexus, except the feeling doesn't go away. It stays aching for days. After that night, I had no choice but to start using what little money I had left to buy groceries from the one convenience store still open in our town. Nitrate-filled beef jerky, 6-month-old potato chips, even Snickers bars. Not only did those snacks quickly add up in price, they contained hardly any nutrition whatsoever. Imagine looking at your starving 7-year-old daughter and noticing that her skin has taken on an odd, pale shade of yellow, or cringing when you see that your wife's eyes are beginning to sink into her skull and that her rib cage is starting to poke through her t-shirt, and have nothing to give them but another handful of stale Planters peanuts. It was obvious I was fighting a battle I couldn't win, and I told my wife and daughter that we were going to have to abandon our property and head for Flagstaff, Arizona, to live with my cousin and his wife. It made me sick to know that I would be completely mooching off relatives, showing up at their front door like beggars with nothing but 3 hungry mouths and whatever clothes would fit in the cab of my truck. But it just didn't seem like there was any other choice. That is, until I read the newspaper article that would change my life, and that would eventually change the lives of more than 24,600 other Americans just like me. It was 5 days before we planned to leave, and I was back in the grocery store, buying a pack of Lunchables for Susan and Sarah to split. As I waited in line at the counter, I grabbed a copy of our local newspaper, the Imperial Valley Press, and began leafing through it, when something on the 3rd page caught my eye. It was a photograph of an old-looking man who had a receding hairline, but the most alive eyes I'd ever seen. And directly below that photo there was a story about how he and a small team of researchers had developed a breakthrough method for producing a self-renewing supply of fresh food and water, something they planned to use in the world's most dangerous countries, places where local militias and gangs had a monopoly on food and the citizens were starving. According to the interview with the man, whose name was Professor F.W. Craven, this system could run in any climate, from a frozen tundra to a barren desert, only required a few square feet of space to set up, and needed only a few gallons of water to operate. Most incredibly of all, his team was doing it all right in the Imperial Valley, about 15 minutes from where I lived. My pulse began to race as I thought about the implications. If I could build this entire thing in a space about the size of a closet, then perhaps I could use it to provide nutritious food and water for my family, even during a terrible drought, and even keep it concealed so that looters, starving neighbors, or violent drug addicts would have no idea it was there. So the following day, I drove across town to find this professor. I knew it was a long shot, but when you're desperate enough, you'll do whatever it takes to protect your family. Looking back now, it almost feels like a dream. Me pulling up in the driveway of a small one-story brick house that looked nothing like a research lab. Me knocking on the front door and telling the graying old man who answered my entire story, how my family was starving, how we were out of money, how we were out of hope, and me staring dumbly as that same graying old man led me out to his backyard, a space about the size of an SUV, and where I saw nothing but some colorful flowers, a few bushes, and 4 small boxes chucked in a corner. This is supposed to hold the key to providing a permanent supply of fresh food and drinking water to the world's most impoverished countries? I was confused. Then I was angry, as what Professor Craven said to me next sounded like the most bald-faced lie I'd ever heard. Through more than 14 years of research and testing, we've made this system incredibly efficient. In fact, in the next year, this single microfarm will yield 1,500 duck and chicken eggs, 12,500 quail eggs, 210 pounds of duck meat, 230 pounds of chicken meat, 175 pounds of rabbit meat, 120 pounds of juicy tomatoes, 30 pounds of bell peppers, and 110 pounds of cucumbers. And those are just the vegetables I've chosen to grow. You can easily grow pretty much any produce you want to eat with it. It will also provide gallons of purified drinking water to a family during emergencies. But the most important thing is that it costs almost nothing to build and less than $3,000 to get everything you need. And once you set it up and let it run, you never have to spend another dime on food and water again. My jaw dropped, and I stared at Professor Craven like he was a lying idiot. He stared back at me like I was a man who just didn't get it. "It's obvious you don't believe me," he said. "That's okay, I actually get that a lot." And with that, he launched into the incredible explanation of how this holy grail in self-sufficiency works. Professor Craven's system is essentially just a mirror of what already happens in nature. In any healthy ecosystem, the waste of one creature turns into food for others. Everything is conserved, and nothing is wasted. Take, for example, rabbits living in the wild. Their waste feeds the plants grow and feed the rabbits. It's a self-sustaining system where everyone benefits. As Professor Craven was telling me this, he walked over to one of the boxes in the corner and opened it. Look, it wasn't just an old box. It housed 4 chickens inside of it. I told him that I was surprised that there were no sounds at all. Well, there's a trick to soundproofing the box, so that you'll not hear any sounds. Nobody will know that you're keeping all these animals here. I keep 5 types of animals: chickens, ducks, rabbits, quail, and fish. You don't need all of these if you don't want to. The system is modular, meaning that if you just decide to rear fish or just rabbits, you can do so while remaining self-sufficient. Next, the professor took me back inside to his study and pulled out a large piece of drafting paper. On it was a blueprint showing me exactly how everything works. In Professor Craven's system, all the animals are comfortably housed in soundproof boxes. Using a few pieces of inexpensive piping and some water, the animal waste gets transported to the vegetable garden where it works as an extremely potent fertilizer. As the water passes through the rock bed that lines his vegetable garden, it's naturally purified, and then cycled into the fish tank, although some of it can also be diverted to containers for clean drinking water during an emergency. Finally, the fish waste is pumped out of the tank and back to the vegetable garden. Oh yeah, plus, the vegetables can be used to feed those animals I mentioned at the start. In other words, this mad professor had created a zero-waste system for growing fresh, juicy fruits and vegetables while discreetly raising as many small animals as you want, providing a permanent supply of fresh meat and protein-rich eggs. Once Professor Craven explained it to me, it made a lot of sense. But I still did have one major nagging question. Why was the professor obsessed with making his food and water production system so discreet? The answer, it turns out, is that he developed this self-replenishing microfarm for some of the world's most war-torn places, rural villages in countries like Sudan, Ethiopia, and Afghanistan. The tragic fact of the matter is that in violent places like these, tribal warlords have a monopoly on all food coming in and out of the villages. They'll routinely steal food from the local villagers to feed their own armies, even if it meant leaving innocent and helpless local families to starve. So if the professor was going to start testing his system by providing it to a few villagers, it was vital that the guerrilla armies and warlords didn't know it existed. I thought back to my farm and how our fruits and vegetables had been taken in the night, probably by some formerly honest farmer who had been forced to steal to keep his children from starving. I thought about how my situation now was exactly the same one that millions of American families would find themselves in if rising food costs caused the food system to collapse, or the government broke down and bloody anarchy spilled out into the streets, or even if there was another major disaster like Katrina. And I realized that Professor Craven's system was something every single American needed to know about if they wanted to keep their families both fed and safe from desperate, starving looters when stuff hits the fan. That was, of course, if it really worked as advertised. And fortunately, I knew just the family to test it on. Mine. So the very next day, and with the generous help of Professor Craven, I went to work building the system in my own backyard. It took us all of an hour to gather the materials we needed. The biggest items on the list were just a few square feet of mesh wire, some scraps of wood, some inexpensive PVC piping, a handful of rocks, and a plastic tub. Professor Craven also showed me a website online, which I'll tell you about later, where I was able to have 25 young tilapia shipped overnight to my house for less than $100. And to get a jump start, I stopped by a friend's farm and bought some vegetable plants, 6 young hens, and a rooster off of him for $7 each. Now, I chose hens and roosters because I'm comfortable with raising them, but when you're building this for yourself, you can pick and choose any small animals that you want. And I chose to grab some vegetable plants that were already grown, because my family was starving and time was a luxury I couldn't afford. But if you follow the instructions I'm about to give you and build your own self-renewing food and water source today, before a disaster strikes or things spiral out of control, then you can just as easily plant seeds and give them time to grow on their own. Well, anyway, the total cost of materials, plants, and animals was $210, which I found to be shockingly cheap. And even more surprising was the fact that total, we had Professor Craven's entire system completely built and functional in less than 2 hours of time. It was all so easy, just screwing and hammering some pieces together, laying down some wiring, pouring some soil. If you know how to use a screwdriver, you can set it up, no problem at all. My daughter Sarah even had a great time giving us a hand. I hadn't heard her laugh or seen her smile so much in probably a year, and it felt really good to be showing her how to be self-reliant. Within a week, my hens were producing an average of 6 eggs per day, enough for me, Susan, and Sarah to each have 2 protein-rich and fresh eggs every morning for breakfast. After a month eating nothing but convenience store snacks, those eggs were one of the most heavenly things we'd ever tasted. For the tilapia, I just put them into the tub and let the nutrient-rich water from the plants feed them. Now, remember, I only ordered 25 fish, which may not seem like enough to feed a family, but just one female tilapia will lay over 2,000 eggs, which means that in the near future, you'll have more fresh, juicy fish than you could ever eat. That's actually a good thing, though, because those extra eggs can be used to provide nutrition for your chickens, rabbits, quail, and other small animals, and they also make a great fertilizer. In fact, that's what makes Professor Craven's system so amazing. Every single component complements the others. The animals fertilize the garden feeds the fish fertilize the plants and feed the animals. It's the perfect self-contained Garden of Eden, and it all took less than $210 and less than 2 hours of time to build. Plus, because the piping hides odor and the boxes are soundproofed using Professor Craven's secret method, a stranger would simply never know that my backyard was now a life-giving oasis, even if they were 2 feet away. Within a month, the system was producing enough food to provide my family with 3 meals per day, and I'm talking 3 real meals. Fresh salads, fresh fish fillets, cooked chicken breasts, you name it. The only time we had to add water was when we drank some of the filtered water from the rock bed of the garden, which wasn't that often. But it sure was comforting to know that if there was an utter disaster, and water became hard to come by, we would have fresh, clean drinking water at our disposal, and that we could take several gallons of it without any risk of disrupting our microfarm's little self-contained ecosystem. It was so incredible to see my wife and daughter go to sleep each night with a full stomach, to see Sarah's skin color go from a sick yellow to a flush, healthy glow, to see my wife return to a normal weight, and to see her ribcage no longer stick out of her shirt. To know that I had the power to keep my family nourished, safe, and completely self-reliant, to not have to beg for food or to ask the government for handouts, or put a burden on others because I couldn't provide for my loved ones and had hungry mouths to feed. And to know that even in one of the most desolate, worst towns in the world, a place that already looks like it's in the aftermath of some apocalyptic collapse because it is, we could not only survive, but thrive. I thought about all of the other honest, fundamentally good, but desperately vulnerable American families out there whose lives may be one day saved by this system. Preppers and those who are focused on preparing for a disaster. Folks who probably already have an emergency food and water supply, and who don't realize how easy it is for their stockpile to be stolen or looted when stuff hits the fan. If there's a serious disaster, or the food system collapses, or even if the government crumbles and local militias or rabid mobs take to ruling the streets, the first thing that those in power are going to do is seize all of the food they can. It's what happened in the Soviet Union when the communists seized control, and in China when Mao rose to power, and in Cuba after Castro's coup, and even more recently in Venezuela after Chavez declared a state of socialism. And it's exactly the same thing that will happen here in the U.S. when stuff hits the fan. In fact, a 2012 executive order signed by Obama dictates that all emergency food stockpiles be handed over to FEMA during a disaster or crisis, and their definition of both those terms is chillingly broad. When things get bad, the government and looters alike will go house to house. They'll search your cellar, they'll search your basement, they'll even look in your storage sheds. But what they're not going to do is give 1 second glance to a few empty boxes scattered across your backyard. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized I had a fundamental duty to teach you how to build Professor Craven's system for yourself. Because this just isn't about having fresh food or water. It's about saving your life, which is why I went to Professor Craven and begged him to create an instructional video that outlines everything you need to know to get your system up and running. And he flat out refused. He was afraid that putting out this information to the American public could threaten his chances of getting the funding he needed to bring it to desperate families in places that are being ravaged by war. He told me that this was his life's work, his masterpiece, his fundamental contribution to humanity, and that sharing it with the world too early could put it all in jeopardy. But I persisted. I called or visited him every single day. I asked him why he was okay with bringing his revolutionary system to the world's poorest places, but not with giving it to his friends, his neighbors, or his fellow patriots. That last point finally broke him down until he eventually agreed to share it. Hearing him say yes was one of the most exciting and rewarding moments of my life. We spent the following weekend shooting the videos and several more days to edit the film and add subtitles to make it even easier to understand. The final videos are really something. When you watch them, you'll feel like you're looking right over my shoulder, building the system with me in real time. But of course, you can always pause, rewind, or even watch what I'm doing in slow motion. It took us 3 more weeks to come up with a complete accompanying document outlining every step required. I had to make sure that there was no academic mumbo-jumbo and that everyone who's past 3rd grade could understand it. But it was worth the time I invested 1,000 times over, because the end result is nothing short of amazing. A step-by-step, looking-over-my-shoulders video guide that anyone can use to make their own self-contained food-producing system cheaply, quickly, and easily. We called it the Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts Program, and even though the system was really simple for me to build, I needed some definitive proof that anyone could use the program to create their own completely hidden, completely self-automated food factory in their backyard without any trouble, and achieve complete food and water independence in just a few short weeks. So I went online and talked to some preparedness website owners who had a decent readership base, and got their permission to send the first version of the system to a select few of their subscribers to obtain feedback. Here are some of their comments. Joe from Little Rock, Arkansas says, "I'm 73 this year, and I thought I was too old to set up anything like this. Plus, I was never handy with tools. When I watched the program, I thought it looked really easy. I thought to myself, let's give it a try. I went to the local hardware store to obtain the parts, and it took me just an hour to set up the basic system. The system pretty much runs automatically. It's perfect for older folks like us because there's almost no work involved. I'm going to recommend this to all my friends. Thank you for letting us know such a solution existed." Susan from Lansing, Michigan writes in and says, "I live in a small apartment, and I believe that it's almost impossible to grow your own food without a garden. I'm delighted that this system has proven me wrong. My system is just next to my kitchen stove, and it's really convenient to take food out of the system. It's literally like going into your own grocery store and picking what you want without paying." Robert from Northridge, California says, "I lived on a farm when I was younger, and honestly, I thought this was genius. My main problem with farming is that it takes time to clear the waste. Plus, it's really smelly. What most people don't know is that most of the animal stench actually comes from the waste. This system clears up the waste immediately by flushing them away like a toilet, so there's practically no smell. I built my own system, and already I'm saving hundreds of dollars a month on food." And that's just a tiny taste of the emails I received. As I write this today, more than 24,000 Americans have now used the video guide and step-by-step blueprints we created to build self-sufficiency shortcuts for themselves. Imagine $210 for a system that only takes 5 minutes per day to maintain because it runs almost entirely on autopilot for a lifetime of healthy, cheap, and nutritious food, plus the security of having gallons of purified water on demand, even in an emergency. It's probably the quickest and easiest way to gain complete self-sufficiency in the world. Even if you've never picked up a screwdriver in your life, even if you think you're too old or not smart enough to set this up, we'll show you step by step what to get, how to find the parts for cheap or even free, how to assemble the parts, everything. As long as you understand how to turn that screwdriver, play a video, and pass third grade English, you can build and set up this system no problem. When you grab the Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts program, you'll discover how to set the entire system up and running, even if you don't have a backyard or don't have a lot of space. Hint, it's possible to stack things vertically. Tips and tricks on setting up different modules of the system, so that if you only want fish or you only want chicken, you don't need to implement the whole system. You have the freedom to mix and match. The secret's to soundproofing your entire system so that there's absolutely no noise. In a usual farm, chickens may produce a lot of noise, but this little trick blocks out virtually all of the sound. Plus, an additional benefit is that animals will be kept warm with the insulation, so it doesn't matter if you live in a cold region. And how to keep your new food-generating microfarm cool during the hottest summer months, even if you live in the Mojave Desert, and without using any electricity. Some of the system can be substituted with alternatives that are dirt cheap or almost free. For example, you don't need an expensive fish tank if you want to keep fish. Inside, you'll discover the perfect alternative that costs less than $20 and works just as well. I'll show you how to make the setup completely undetectable, so that even if someone walks into your backyard, they wouldn't realize that you have a food factory there. This is especially important if you have visitors frequently and don't want to attract any attention. And that's just the video. Because I want to make this as easy as possible for you, and also because some of you may prefer to read rather than watching videos, you're also going to receive a detailed instruction manual with pictures, a follow-along quick start guide, and step-by-step project completion cheat sheet. The companion manual goes hand in hand with the videos. Not only that, in the workbook, you'll get step-by-step illustrated instructions so that you can keep them handy while you're working. Plus, you'll get the cheat sheet so you can mark down your dimensions and costs and ensure that you're doing the proven self-sufficiency shortcuts the right way. Here's my promise to you. Simply follow the program, and you'll be amazed at how easily you're able to set up your very own backyard food factory. It should take less than 3 hours and give you an assortment of meats and vegetables virtually on autopilot. You'll be shocked at how much food it can produce and how easy it is to have gallons of crystal clear filtered drinking water on demand if you need it. Plus, while the system was designed to be completely undetectable by those who you don't want to know about it, it's also very portable, meaning that if a disaster hits, you can put the system in your vehicle and move it to your bug-out location easily. That makes it perfect for you if you need a source of food and water, and staying at home just simply isn't possible. Professor Craven's system saved my family's life, which is why I truly believe that I have a moral duty to share self-sufficiency shortcuts, along with the easy-to-follow video guides, to as many Americans as I possibly can. So, I'm going to tell you exactly how you can get it for yourself and your loved ones in just a second. But you know what? Just to prove how much I care about you and your family, I want to be really generous here and give you 5 fast-action bonuses just for trying out the self-sufficiency shortcut system. You can't get this deal anywhere else, only right here if you want to join the program today. The risk is completely on me, because these fast-action bonuses are yours free, even if you decide that self-sufficiency shortcuts isn't for you. Fast-action bonus number 1, Animal Lifesavers. Did you know that rabbit fat is antibacterial? And that in a disaster scenario, if you don't have medications on hand, you can use it to effectively heal cuts and wounds? Animals have a lot more uses than just for meat and eggs, and Animal Lifesavers will give you little-known ways that the animals you have can save your life. This special report is sold separately for $17. Fast Action Bonus number 2, Speed Breeding Secrets. With this special report, you'll be able to get more out of your system. Farmers discovered that there are certain plant foods that will accelerate the growth of the animals, giving you more meat to put on your family's table. Just follow the simple methods inside, and you'll double your output almost immediately. This special report is also sold separately for $17. Fast Action Bonus number 3, The Complete Guide to Canning and Preserving Food. In this special report, you'll discover how to preserve meat and vegetables so that they can last for a long time, sometimes even more than a year, without relying on refrigeration. Just start small with the system because it will quickly give you more food than you can ever consume. This special report is sold separately for $12.95. Fast Action Bonus number 4, Square Foot Potato Production. You need carbohydrates in your diet, And potatoes are a great source. This special report will show you how you can grow more than 100 pounds of potato a year in just 4 square feet of space. Sounds impossible? Not if you use the reed layering method I'm about to show you. This special report is sold separately for $29. Fast Action Bonus number 5. 24/7 personal email support for an entire year. If you didn't purchase via this video, you'll just get 2 months worth of email access. But if you take action today, I'll upgrade your 2 months to a full year of email access to me and Professor Craven. Ask us any questions regarding setting up the system. I understand that no matter how hard I work to make sure that the program is the most easy-to-complete system it can be, there will always be those times where folks have a question or a specific situation. That's why I've gotten Professor Craven to agree to partner with me. So if you ever feel like you're stuck, or you're not sure what to do, or even if you have an idea for a modification and want to run it by Professor Craven to get his thoughts, all you have to do is send us an email, and we'll get back to you immediately with a clear and detailed answer to your question. Because the professor was hesitant to commit to making himself available for 24/7 support for an entire year, he insisted that we ask people who wanted this option to pay an additional $249. But during this very limited time offer, where we're trying to make an extremely strong push to get self-sufficiency shortcuts into as many hands as possible, he's agreed to give those who test drive the program today an extremely sweet deal and provide you the entire year of support absolutely free. Okay, so by this point, you're probably wondering what you need to do to get started. Until now, there's never been a way to get your hands on these blueprints, or to be shown in step-by-step fashion how to set up the system for yourself, unless you're a university professor or graduate student. And there's really nothing like this in the world, which is why Professor Craven is in the final stages of receiving a multi-million-dollar grant to start rolling it out to conflict-filled countries across the globe. Nonprofits and government agencies alike have now seen just how powerful self-sufficiency shortcuts is. They know it works, and they know that it can save millions of lives. Of course, using Professor Craven's program isn't your only option when it comes to having a fresh food supply. You could set up a garden in your backyard. But in an emergency or survival situation, having a garden is like standing out on your front porch and screaming to looters and hungry mobs that you have lots of food, and that they should come onto your property and help themselves. You could also build a system for yourself based on what I mentioned in this video. You've seen how the setup works now, and if you feel comfortable making this on your own without any further help, then please do. I can't emphasize how important it is to have such a system producing food and water for you and your family in a crisis. It's a lifesaver. But why go through the hassle of planning everything and having the possibility of making one tiny mistake that renders the whole system inoperable? Wouldn't it be easier to just get the Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts program today and have us show you every little detail in easy-to-read blueprints and step-by-step videos that you can watch and replay as many times as you want? How much is it worth to you to know that no matter what happens in the coming weeks, months, or years, whether it's a natural disaster that floods bacteria into the drinking water, or an EMP that wipes out the grid, or even a collapse in the U.S. food system, your family will have stuffed stomachs full of nutritious food at all times, even as those around you go hungry. And even as outside your home, your neighbors begin attacking neighbors for just one clean glass of water. Professor Craven and I set the regular retail price of the Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts to $297, which everyone has been telling us is far too cheap. After all, that's already less than it costs the average family for a month's worth of groceries. And with this system, you'll be set up to generate enough fresh and delicious food to feed your family for life, and without ever having to spend another dime. That means that even in the short term, or if you're blessed and your loved ones aren't affected by a disaster, whether natural or man-made, you'll still be able to save between $3,000 and $5,000 per year on groceries. So I really do think that at $297, Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts is worth every single penny. But like I keep saying, this has nothing to do with money, and everything to do with keeping your family protected. And because I want to get Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts out there to as many Americans as possible, today, I'm not even going to ask you to pay half of the $297 retail price. You see, for a few days only, Professor Craven has agreed to let me give away his entire system to visitors of this website at cost. Which means, if you're willing to step up and take control of your family's security by providing them with a lifetime supply of fresh food and an on-demand supply of fresh drinking water, even during a devastating disaster, then we're willing to step up too. And for action takers today, hand over all of the video guides, the easy-to-follow blueprints at a hugely discounted price, the extremely important bonuses not available anywhere else, and even a whole year's access to 24/7 support. For just a small one-time investment of $39, you can get the complete program at the current price only if you act right now by clicking the Add to Cart button below. But hold on, I'm not done yet. Here's why it's basically free. Actually, better than free. Listen, I want you to feel 100% confident about grabbing the self-sufficiency shortcuts today. If you click the Add to Cart button right now and invest in the program, you are also going to get my 100% guarantee. Here's how it works. Simply click the Add to Cart button below. You'll be brought to our secure order page that looks like this. Fill in your payment details, and you'll have immediate access to all you need to set up the system. Watch the videos, read the manuals. You just take our program for a ride today for the next 60 days. That's 2 full months. And if you're not thrilled with the results, I'll give you the money back immediately. Plus, you can keep the products. That's our way to say thank you for putting your trust in us. Simply let me know by sending me an email located at the top of the members area. You'll receive a prompt and courteous refund within 24 hours. Because I personally don't believe that I deserve your money unless I over-deliver on my promises and unless you get astonishing results. Plus, I know from experience, well over 23,000 folks who've used the system and seen their monthly expenses drop like a rock. If you're like most folks, you'll be shocked at how much money you're saving. The system will more than pay for itself the very first month you use it. Actually, I'm going to do something even more. Something that no one in their right mind thinks about doing unless one's extremely confident. I'm going out on a limb here. If you click Add to Cart button right now and invest in the program, you are also going to get my 300%, absolutely zero risk guarantee. Here's how it works. If you can prove to me that you followed the program and set up the basic system and don't achieve the results promised in this presentation, I'll reach into my own pocket and pay you 300% of the price you invested today, plus the cost of setting up the system. You'll need to show me the receipts for the parts you paid. Again, just send me an email located in the members area, and you'll get paid via PayPal. I couldn't make this guarantee unless I'm so sure that it'll work for you. I'm taking all the risk here, and you risk nothing. All you need to do to get started is to click the Add to Cart button below and fill in your payment details. If you want to take advantage of this huge discounted pricing and the free support and even the money-back guarantee, it's vital that you act now. The professor is an extremely busy man, and every time another American takes control of their destiny by choosing to build the self-sufficiency shortcut system for themselves, it takes up even more of Craven's time. Which is why he's only agreed to let me give away this system at cost for a few days. So, if you come back to this presentation tomorrow or next week, there's a very real chance you'll be asked to pay the full $297. There's simply nothing I can do about it. Right now, you need to make a decision that will affect your independence, your security, and the safety of your family for years to come. And when you think about it, you really only have 3 options. Your first option is to do nothing. This video will be over in just a few seconds, and you could just leave the site and go on with your day. Obviously, that choice is yours, and it's not something I can make for you. But before you leave, think about what will happen a week, a month, or a year from now when the unimaginable happens and disaster strikes. Will your family be truly food independent? Will any emergency stockpile you have be safely hidden from government agencies or looters? Will you have enough clean drinking water to survive for several weeks or longer? And if the answer is no, or even if you're not sure, wouldn't you regret not taking this one simple action today and trying out self-sufficiency shortcuts for a full 60 days and completely risk-free? That brings us to the second option, which is to take what you've discovered today and figure out everything by yourself. If you can, then great. But most of us prefer a proven method, an expert like Professor Craven showing us every single detail. And then there's the third option. Let me take all of the risk for you. Do what over 24,000 folks have already done. Grab your copy of the self-sufficiency shortcuts right now and try it completely risk-free. By joining us today, you'll ensure you avoid common mistakes, and you'll be able to quickly implement a system that will not only protect your loved ones, but even save you money on groceries right from the first month, while continuing to slash your grocery bill by more than $3,000 per year indefinitely without any painful trial and error. Choose option number 3 today and gain a limitless supply of fresh food that your family deserves on autopilot. And let us show you how to set it up in less time than it takes to go to the grocery store and back. Choose option number 3 today and have a contamination-proof supply of clean drinking water that you can access on demand. Choose option number 3 today and sleep soundly tonight, knowing that your family will be provided for even in the worst of times, even when the grocery store shelves are bare and those around you grow desperate in their search for food. Ultimately, the choice is yours. But whatever you decide, you must choose now. This presentation is ending as I speak, and if you return to it later, I can't guarantee the $39 price, or the fast action bonus, including 1 year of email support with Professor Craven, or the 300% zero-risk ironclad guarantee will still be here. Here's the final thing I'll leave you with, and it's something you already know inside your heart. Self-sufficiency shortcuts isn't really about having food and water. It's about taking care of your family. For me, there's no better feeling in the world than knowing that no matter what happens, if there's a hurricane and the stores are empty, or a dirty bomb contaminates the water supply, or an EMP causes the grid to go down, I have the peace of mind of knowing my completely hidden, completely self-replenishing microfarm will still be running on autopilot, ensuring that my wife and little girl are radiantly healthy and well-fed. That's why I'm so passionate about getting this simple system into your hands today, so you can finally know that no matter what happens, your family's most vital needs are covered. But I can only help you if you take action right now. There are only 10 seconds left until this presentation ends. Make the only real decision there is and click the Add to Cart button you see below. I can't wait to hear from you after you've gone through the program and find out how quick, easy, and cheap it is to become self-sufficient in just a few square feet of space. Thank you for listening to my presentation. See you on the other side. Still here? That's okay. It's actually pretty common for folks to have some questions after watching this presentation. So let me do my best to answer some of the most common questions I get asked. 1. Do self-sufficiency shortcuts really, truly run on autopilot? The answer is yes, it really does. The reason is that Professor Craven designed the entire system to mirror what already happens in nature. Here's a reminder of exactly how the system works. 1. You have a small, completely hidden coop with whatever small animals you'd like. 2. Using water, the waste is transported into a small garden through inexpensive piping. 3. The wastewater fertilizes the vegetables, then drains through the rock bed where it's purified. 4. That purified water goes into the fish tank and can also be used as clean drinking water. 5. Waste from the fish tank is then flushed back into the garden, where the vegetables can both be consumed and used to feed your animals. As you can see, the system is entirely self-contained. The only time you'll spend on the system is collecting your fresh meat and produce, or adding some fresh water to the system if you happen to use a lot of it for drinking water. 2. What kind of food can I reasonably expect to produce from the system? Your total yield will be dependent on the size of your microfarm, but typically, even a few square feet can be enough to produce enough fresh eggs, fish, and other meat, as well as enough garden vegetables to provide a family of 4 with 3 full meals per day. 3. A chicken coop is loud and smelly. How is it possible that you can have live animals, not to mention fish, and have it be completely hidden from plain view? Because self-sufficiency shortcuts was developed for some of the most dangerous places in the world, it was vital that the professor make it undetectable. That's why he spent years coming up with a patent-pending new method for soundproofing the boxes where the animals are kept. It's also why he developed a system so that the inexpensive piping that transfers the waste completely hides all the odors. 4. What do I get when I invest in the Self-Sufficiency Shortcuts program? You'll get the step-by-step video guide on how to build your self-sufficiency shortcut system, companion manuals and quick start guides, and for limited time only, if you order now, you'll also get Animal Lifesavers, Speed Breeding Secrets, the complete guide to canning and preserving food, square foot potato production, 24/7 personal email support with Professor Craven for an entire year. 5. What happens if I get stuck? Of the 24,615 people who have already decided to take control of their food independence and protect their families, less than 1% ever have any issues with building a system. We like to say that if you can twist a screwdriver, you can build this thing, and we're not kidding. That being said, we're also including an entire year of 24/7 support with your investment today. So if you happen to have a question or want some guidance, all you have to do is email us using the link we provide in your members portal, and either myself or Professor Craven will get back to you right away. 6. What happens if I change my mind about this or your program doesn't work as promised? To date, Self-Sufficiency boasts more than 24,000 happy customers, people who have already built the system for themselves and who are now using it to slash thousands of dollars off their annual grocery bill while having an invaluable food supply for if the stuff hits the fan. Now, all of that being said, we do want to make sure you're 100% comfortable in your decision to secure self-sufficiency shortcuts for yourself and your family. If you click the Add to Cart button right now and invest in the program, you are also going to get my 100% guarantee. Simply say maybe to Professor Craven's system today. Start checking out the members, start checking out the materials in the members area, watch the over-the-shoulder DVDs, and take a couple of hours to build it for yourself. If after making your decision you change your mind or aren't satisfied, simply send us an email and we'll immediately refund your entire purchase with no questions asked. Plus, the guides and bonuses are still yours to keep. Plus, if you order today, you're protected by our 300% money-back guarantee. Here's how it works. If you can prove to me that you followed the program and set up the basic system and doesn't achieve the results promised in this presentation, I'll reach into my own pockets and pay you 300% of the price you invested today, plus the costs for setting up the system. You'll need to show me receipts for the parts you paid. Again, just send me an email located in the members area, and you'll get paid via PayPal. 7. Okay, so how do I get started? Just hit the Add to Cart button that you see right below this video. The checkout page takes about 30 seconds to complete, and you'll then have access to all of the materials you need to get started. You'll be covered by our guarantees, so it's completely risk-free. So click the Add to Cart button below and fill in your payment information on the checkout page. I'll see you on the other side.